Good evening, everyone. I'm Regina Shearer, your host of the Winning Women Talk Show. And thank you so much for taking time out of your busy day to spend with us this evening for another episode of the Winning Women Talk Show. I'm always excited when Thursdays come around because if you are a regular viewer or listener of this show, you know that each and every week we present a different woman and she shares her journey to doing that special something that fulfills her passions, that she has found to be a career goal that satisfies her, fulfills her, that allows her to do those things that touch other people's lives. And most of all, if you've been paying attention as a regular, you find that all of these women give back to their community and do things that benefit other people's lives. And so this show is intended to inspire you and motivate you and make you say to yourself, you know what? If she can do it, so can I. And so we hope that you've been hearing those things that have done exactly that, inspired and motivated you. If you're on that line, that fine line of saying, I've always wanted to do this, however, or but, we hope that that but will be eliminated maybe tonight by what you hear so that you can say, I've always wanted to do this and instead of but tonight. And so we thank you. Now, as you know, each and every week, we invite you to participate in this show. And so we'd love to hear from you as you listen to our guest tonight. You can contact us at 781 384 5587. That's right. You can call in because I know our guests would love it. It's 781 384 5587. Or you can email me, and that's Regina at rgbinternetradio.com. Again, Regina at rgbinternetradio.com. I am so happy to be able to introduce you to our guest this evening, who is Kelly Chun. She is the principal and founder of Kelly Chun and Associates, which is, I'm going to call KCA. It's a
There you
state
go.
certified DBE award winning collaborative consultancy, which is based in Boston. Kelly's company has over 25 years of providing strategic communications, cause marketing, and public relations services designed to promote diversity, inclusion, and social change in academic, government, for profit, and nonprofit institutions and businesses. Her client partners include Massachusetts departments, and there's a lot of them. I'm just going to mention a few of transportation, housing, public health, Boston redevelopment projects, neighborhood development projects, the Wang Center for the Performing Arts, television networks and broadcast shows, and much, 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 much more. I cannot believe one woman can span and expand her business to include so many diverse types of institutions, agencies, and organizations. Her career spans work as an assistant. And listen, that's not all she does. She is an assistant professor at Northeastern University, and she was, but she also has taught and lectured at universities across the nation and the world, which include American University in Rome and JOST TV College in Nigeria. And listen to this. She was a news and public affairs writer and producer at, and all of us in the New England area know these stations, Channel 4, Channel 5, and Channel 7. She was a media consultant to the Nigerian government's National Television Authority. And prior to starting her company, Kelly Chun and Associates, she was a gubernatorial appointee to several councils and boards in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts and Boston. And those were many. So I won't even begin to name all of those. All I can say is her work and leadership was recognized and earned her Kelly Chun Day on May 1st, 2012. Now, how many of us have had that opportunity? And the Simmons, and she also was recognized by Simmons College and awarded professional leadership in 2013. In 2017, Boston Business Journal profiled her as a woman of influence. And I can assure you, after having met her before the show and talked with her, she certainly is. She's been featured in various business magazines, too many to mention, appeared on several news and business TV stations. I'll just pick out one, C-SPAN, for instance, and quoted in publications too numerous to mention. Kelly is a graduate of New York University and Simmons College Graduate School of Communications Management graduate. And there's so much more to her, but we're going to let Kelly share. If you can believe there's anything left to share, there is. And so, welcome, Kelly, to the Winning Women Talk Show.
Well, thank you so much for having me, Regina, and thank you for that warm introduction. I appreciate it.
I have to say this. I had initially intended to have shorter introductions, but what I found is that for women who like you, who are doing so much for so many in so many different ways, I just don't want to eliminate folk understanding, because you won't have time during the show to share everything you've done in life. So I try to just give them a good picture. And you are a great picture. Um, if a picture's worth 1,000 words, you have at least 1,200,000 coming. So, as always, we start off by asking our guests to tell us about themselves. And so, can you share with us uh, about yourself growing up? Who you are, where you're from, and this journey through education, through careers, whatever that has led you to becoming a founder and principal of Kelly Chun and Associates.
Where do I begin? I'll make my life story very quick. My parents were part of the Great Migration from the South to the North in the 50s. They came from Florida to Boston when I was 4. When I asked my mother why they chose Boston, she said education. She thought I
Mhm.
could get a good education here. I went through the Boston public school system. I'm an only child. I grew up in a multicultural neighborhood. Some of your audience, which is from Boston, are probably familiar with the neighborhoods of the South End and the Back Bay, which is where I grew up. And then we moved to another multicultural neighborhood, Jamaica Plain, in Boston. I was a reporter in high school and actually got into trouble for some of my reporting. This would be in the 70s. I guess the thing that would probably position me and would give people a sense of who I am is I'm a child of the 60s. The
Mhm.
60s were very, had a lot of turmoil, a lot of social activism, the civil rights struggle, and that certainly had an impact on me. My mother was very interested in the news. We always had magazines and newspapers and books in our home. And so that also had an impact on me. I remember washing dishes with my mom and seeing the demonstrations in Birmingham, also known as Birmingham,
Mhm.
and the kids, the children getting assaulted by the cops and the dogs and the police and all that, and that certainly had an impact on me. So going back to the trouble that I got into as a reporter in high school, we the young women in the school decided that we were going to wear pants. I mean, this sounds very, OG, back in the day, but we were not allowed to wear pants, in the
Right.
60s. So we had to wear dresses or skirts or whatever. And so we decided we
Mhm.
wanted to wear pants. And I did a report on it for the local newspaper, very local newspaper. And I got called into the principal's office for, spilling the tea, about what was going on at Brighton High School. And I also got into trouble for not saluting the flag. I just felt that, the flag wasn't speaking to me, and why should I salute the flag? And so I remember the principal giving me a lecture about the man without a country. So,
Oh.
that should give you a sense of, the kind of young person that I was. And then as you noted, I went on to go to school to college at the New York University. I wanted to get away from home and have the experience of being in New York, particularly majoring in journalism as I did. Majored in broadcast journalism and minored in African American studies, and
Mm-hmm.
then went out into came home. You look back at your life and you look at the inflection points, and my mom was like, well, why don't you just stay in New York? You could live at the Y. I was like, live at the Y? My dorm is on Fifth Avenue in the Village, and you want me to live in the
Right.
Y? I mean, uh, so
Yeah.
I came home, and that's how I started in TV news. You had said that I worked in TV news and public affairs, and so I actually started off as a secretary. This is
Woo.
back in the 70s. I started off as a secretary in the public affairs department, and it really kind of oriented me into how broadcast stations provide public service, public service announcements. This was back in the day when you had to give equal time to issues, which you don't really have to do anymore. And so we did a lot of outreach in the community. And then I drifted into the news department as a news writer, and moved on to the other stations. I worked for I don't even remember, it's so long ago, but I eventually wound up working for all three network affiliates. Nowadays, we have hundreds of cable stations, but back in the day, there were three primary
Yes.
affiliates in markets across the country. So I worked at all three, the ABC, the NBC, and the CBS affiliates in
Mm-hmm.
Boston. And then I left the country. There was nowhere else to go. So I was able to fulfill a dream of mine to live and work in Africa. And I wound up working for as you noted, the Nigerian Television Authority in Nigeria, which allowed me and colleagues. I was part of a team called Jacaranda. We were named after a tree, and that allowed us to travel all over the country. The Nigerian Television Authority is similar to public broadcasting in the sense that they are connected to the government and they have stations all around the country. At the
Mm-hmm.
time, this would have been in the early 80s. At the time, I think there were either 24 or 25 states. So it allowed us to get out of Lagos and to see a lot of the rest of the country. That was my first teaching and training experience. You noted Joss College in the northern part of the country. We were able to teach some of the broadcast ins and outs to people who were involved in broadcasting in Nigeria. And we also were able to travel around the continent. So we went to Cote d'Ivoire, the Ivory Coast, Senegal. We were able to go into the eastern part of the continent. I spent a Christmas in Kenya on safari, which was a camera safari. We didn't shoot any animals, just to make it
Right.
plain. And there were a lot of places that I couldn't go to because of the political issues.
Mm-hmm.
So South Africa was not on the list. Tanzania was having political issues in the early 80s, as was Ghana.
You're right.
So while I was able to travel and see some of the continent, I wasn't able to see some of the countries that I would have liked to have seen. Later, Later, I was able to go to South Africa after apartheid ended.
Mm-hmm.
So that gives you kind of a snapshot of my early career. And when well, I guess I should tell you the end of the story about Nigeria. There was a military coup. Fortunately, it was bloodless. I was not in the country. We were hired by a civilian government, the Shagari government, and the military took over the Christmas holidays while we were away. Came back into the country. We tried to start a production company because we were broadcasters. There were videographers, producers, writers,
Right.
and so we had the skills, but there was too much tumult. There was too much because of the coup. Everything was changing, and we were too early. Nowadays, Nigeria is known for not being Nollywood. They have a very robust um, production industry,
Mm-hmm.
TV and film production industry. As a matter of fact, some of their shows I've seen on Netflix. So
Right.
they've come a long way in the last decades. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
so we weren't able to make the production company work. Some of the folks in the Jacaranda company stayed, but many of us, like myself, we left, and so I came home through Europe. This is my first time seeing Europe. I would encourage those of you who have not traveled, particularly if you can travel on somebody else's dime, take advantage of it for sure. I mean, these are
Yes.
not the best days to be traveling, but when things settle down, I would take advantage of it. Hmm.
Absolutely. As a matter of fact, I think um, that is probably some of the best advice I've heard to people, and regardless of what their profession is. I
Oh
think
yes.
when people have an opportunity to see how other people view the same subject, address it, attack it, work in it, in
Hmm.
environments that deal with it, and especially people who are different from them, it can
Hmm.
certainly broaden their horizons in terms of how they view it themselves. So thank you for that advice, because there's nothing
Yeah.
like seeing if what sometimes when you see how other people live, you forget you don't like them.
Yeah, well, that's true, and it
Right.
it forces you to get out of your comfort zone,
Right.
and you
Right.
you really appreciate what we have in this country. We're certainly not perfect, but
Right.
the lights are on. We have electricity. There's infrastructure. Um, so you really find out how American you are.
Right.
When,
So
and at the time, Nigeria was considered a hardship post
right.
because of
So that's what I was going
infrastructure.
to ask
Yeah.
you.
Hmm.
So can you tell us a little bit? So you were there for a year and a half,
Right.
but
Hmm.
what got you there, and why did you decide to go there? Did
Well,
your
I already
job
told
make
you
you
that.
go?
I already know. I already told you the kind of kid I was. I was somewhat of a rebel, and it had always been a dream of mine to live and work in Africa. I didn't want to just go for a quick trip and come home. I really wanted to have a full experience, and so when the opportunity presented itself, I grabbed it. And people really didn't understand why at the time. Remember, this is the early '80s, and my parents were like, "Are you out of your mind? You have a great job, and you want to give all this up." And I had colleagues who said, "Oh, well, why are you doing that?" I mean, they didn't get it. But I've always followed my heart. So that when that opportunity presented itself, I grabbed it.
What was the most difficult challenge for you in the adjustment to a different culture, society, nation? What was the greatest challenge, and trying to do work in broadcasting there? What was your
Well, in terms of working in broadcasting, there was not a lot of organization, logistics, and also constraints that were put on broadcasters by the government. So, for example, uh, NTA, the Nigerian Television Authority, would buy um, recorders from Germany and TVs from another country, and they didn't match, they didn't fit. So a lot of the equipment was not usable
Got it.
because
Yeah.
they had not coordinated the purchasing, and so it made it very difficult for us to do our jobs. And then in terms of government constraints, as part of our training, we would encourage reporters, editors, producers to do investigative reporting, and they were like, hey, if we did investigative reporting, the government would punish us for that.
Mhm.
We would get in trouble for that.
Right.
So it was very difficult to do some of the training because of the equipment problems, and also because of the government constraints.
Right. Were you an anomaly there as a woman in broadcasting?
Well, there were other women who were part of Jacaranda who were on the team,
Okay.
but we did run into some gender difficulties. We did, but we were pretty much able to overcome them, I
Okay.
think. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because we were badass. I mean, there was so nobody was gonna let us hide our light. There was some encounters,
N-
um, but we pretty much overcame the misogyny and the sexism. Yeah.
Right. So I have a question, and it says, were you a rebel on your own? Are you an only child? Are you the only rebel among your siblings? Or were your parents rebels and you took after them? That's the
Well, my
question.
mother was a rebel. My
Okay.
mother was definitely a rebel. And I'm an only child, and I've always had a mind of my own. And so, yeah, yeah.
I'm glad to hear it.
Someone that I
We-
dated once, he said he was a psychologist, and he said you have an internal locus of control, which means that you operate from the inside out. You're you operate out of your own desires, your own feelings, your
yeah,
own
yes.
wants and needs, rather than being influenced by outside forces. Yeah.
Right, right.
Mhm.
Another email here said, from Veronica says, uh, "Good evening. Uh, I Are you a doctor? Should I address you as Doctor Chun?"
No.
Well,
Mm-mm.
anyway, that's what it says, and it says
No.
Doctor, Ms., Mrs. Chun.
Ms.
Should
always
I?
works. Yeah, Ms. always works. I'm
And
single. Yeah.
the
Mhm.
question is, what did you major in your undergraduate work, and what did you major in your graduate work?
Well, I undergraduate, I majored in broadcast journalism, and I minored in African American studies. And then for my graduate degree, it was a communications management program at what is now Simmons University. When I was there, it was Simmons College. Yeah.
So, were you writing from a young age? What brought your interest into journalism?
Well, I've always been a bookworm. I told you that, there were books and magazines. For example, my mother liked to get Life magazine, and looking through some of her old photos, I saw her with a camera around her neck. So she liked to take pictures. I like to take pictures. She liked to be aware of what was going on in the world. Her favorite subjects were history and geography. She had a very strong interest in politics. For example, she would watch Fox News when President Obama was in office. And I was like, Ma, how can you watch that? And she says, I have to know what they're saying about my president. So, that should give you a sense of so a lot
Mm,
of that kind of rubbed off on me. Um, well, as I noted, I was writing in high school because I was a reporter, a high school reporter for the local paper.
right.
So I've always uh, been writing in one way or the other. Not academically so much, but definitely writing.
So
Mhm.
when you taught at Northeastern, for instance, and taught
Mhm.
and lectured at other institutions, what was the subject matter? Was it broadcast journalism or?
No, it was public relations. You see, I didn't get to the end of the story. After I came, excuse me, after I came home from Nigeria, I freelanced for a while, and then I made a career transition into public relations. Often, and a lot of that is happening now because a lot of journalists are losing their jobs because, for example, the newspaper business is slowly dying. So a lot of newspapers going out of business or merging or laying off people. So a lot of people in the news business are transitioning into public relations. I just did it earlier. I did it in the 80s. Um,
But it's
and
a good fit. I can
it
see
was
where
a
that.
good fit because the aspect of public relations that resonated with me was impact public relations, social change. And so my first public relations job was in a it was for a state agency promoting affordable housing.
Mhm.
So again, social issue, if you were a low or moderate income a person and you needed a place to live or you wanted to buy your first home, the mass housing agency would uh, provide resources, both financial as well as educational, that would help
Mhm.
to position you for either a rental unit, an affordable rental unit, or enable you to buy your first home. So, we did news releases, special events, videos, uh, at brochures. A lot of these things don't exist anymore. Brochures have become PDFs for the most part.
Right.
Um, and so it was a real education for me in terms of public relations, and the biggest one of the biggest benefits of working in that particular position is that I was able to get my master's. That's what led me to Simmons. And the agency paid for most of that education. I only had to pay for one course. So
That's
just like
wonderful.
travel, if you can find somebody to support your education, go for it because it really allowed me to have a whole nother career transition after I left the agency into teaching at Northeastern, as you noted, but also led me to the consulting business.
Right.
So taking advantage of opportunities when they come along, I think is really important.
And I agree with you. For those of you who have just joined us, you have been listening to Kelly Chun, who is the principal and founder of Kelly Chun and Associates. And we have been listening to her journey and some of her experiences, and we still are going to get to why she started Kelly Chun and Associates. But we have to take a very quick break for one of our sponsors. While we're doing that, though, we would love for you to join us in this show. If you have any questions or comments you would like to make to Kelly, please contact us by calling us at 781-384-5587, or you can email me, Regina, at rgbinternetradio.com. So we're going to take a quick break for, as I said, for one of our sponsors, and we will be right back.
At Portal to Hope, we're here to help victims of domestic violence, sexual assault, and stalking crimes. We provide support, resources, and hope to those who need it most. We believe that everyone deserves to live a life free from violence. If you or someone you know is in danger, please reach out for help. Call us at 781-338-7678. We offer a variety of services including counseling, legal aid, job assistance, and housing support. We also work to raise awareness about these issues and to advocate for change. Together, we can create a world where everyone is safe and free from violence. Portal to Hope is here for you.
And we are back with our guest for this evening. Fascinating. And I love just her work experience is so diverse, and the logistics and locations are very diverse as well. And that is with our guest, Kelly Chun. Another email, it says, "Good evening, Kelly. Did you have training behind the camera too? It sounds like you did interviews and asked questions, but did you also film and produce slash edit videos?"
No, I didn't do that. I always worked with an editor when I was in the news business. The news business is very different now. It's all digital. But, at the time, and I don't know if anybody out there remembers VHS tapes, and, yeah. That was the mode that I worked in. So I always worked with a camera person. I always worked with an editor. Mhm.
Okay. So I want to fast forward a little bit, um, for you to tell us a little bit about what prompted Kelly Chun and Associates, for you to move out of being among stations in different countries, doing all the many things, working in the community, and
Mhm.
doing public relations work, etc. And then tell us about some of the projects, because I will give a little clue. She is not just a journalist and writer and all of these other great things you've been hearing: public relations, communications, and strategic thinking and development. But she is also very much into arts and culture, and she's invested in a few projects as well. But we want to know about Kelly Chun and Associates and how these projects resonate from that.
Well, I'd love to say I had a master plan, but I didn't.
Okay.
And I would advise people to have a master plan if they want to go into business, if they want to be entrepreneurial, although you can be entrepreneurial if you're working within traditional organization. In my case, the master's degree that I got from Simmons led me to the teaching at Northeastern, and that uh, prompted people to call me. I did not go into consulting intentionally. I got a call from a local hospital. They were doing a multicultural campaign, and it was multilingual, and they wanted the messaging to really resonate with not only a white mainstream audience, but with a Latino audience, African American, Haitian, Vietnamese, very similar to the work that I did in affordable housing when I worked at Mass Housing. We had a mandate to produce all of our materials multilingually, to reach as broad an audience across the
Mm,
state as we could. So that kind of carried over to my consulting. And so that was the first opportunity I got.
okay.
The hospital was changing their insurance model, and they wanted to let their patients know about the change. So we did a series of public service announcements in different languages. We produced a brochure in different languages, and so that's really what started it all. I mean, I started getting calls. It really wasn't intentional. And what really prompted me to go into business was the state's tobacco education campaign. This would be the state of Massachusetts, also known as the Anti-Smoking Let's Make Smoking History campaign. So I was basically doing a side hustle, teaching by day and using the Northeastern School of Journalism's conference room at night uh, to meet with my colleagues that were part of the bidding or the proposal process. We put together a proposal. I brought several people together, which is how my business model was formed. It's a collaborative business model. I'm a sole proprietor, so I bring people in to meet the needs of the client. So My broadcast background came into play. You know, I knew videographers, I knew writers, I knew graphic artists, I knew photographers,
Mm,
all that sort of. So we formed a team. We bid on the tobacco education campaign, and the state was very strategic in the way that they laid out the campaign. There were basically three audiences. One was the mainstream audience, one was a Latino audience, and one was an African American audience. And so we won the African American audience, the African American campaign. And so that's really what started me off on my business, was winning that particular bid.
okay.
And um, that led to another major project. A lot of our work, particularly early on, was, as we like to say in Boston, eds and meds, you know, education and health.
Mm-hmm.
So we did a obesity prevention campaign called Sisters Together Move More, Eat Better. This was a 5-year campaign, and it was, you know, it wasn't about cosmetics. It was about encouraging particularly African American women between the ages of 18 to 35 to move more and eat better. You know, so you can walk, you know, it's affordable. All you need is a pair of sneakers. You might need to find someone to watch your kids, but walking is a very, you know, doable
Yes.
exercise. So we promoted walking groups. And then on the nutrition side, you know, people are not going to give up their diets. So how can we substitute things like lard and, you know, things that are not healthy, and replace them with healthier alternatives? So we, you know, put together calendars that had healthy food recipes in the calendar for different months. We went into the community and had nutrition demonstrations. We did wellness fairs. We brought in people from, you know, Essence Magazine to talk about the best ways to prepare food. Had them on the local TV stations, radio stations, used publicity, the local newspapers to promote the campaign. And and that also led to other health disparity oriented campaigns. At one point, we
Mm,
were working for 3 or 4 different community health clinics, promoting healthy lifestyles, you know, doing wellness fairs and community walks and, you know, that sort of thing. The Sisters Together campaign, I was a subcontractor for the National Institutes of Health. And really, the purpose of the campaign was to mitigate health issues like, you know, diabetes, heart disease, which stem from overweight. So we didn't really emphasize the obesity aspect of the campaign. We really promoted the more positive aspects, you know,
right.
the walking and the nutrition. And so that was 5 years. And actually, we got recognition from David Satcher under the Clinton administration. This would be the 90s, um, for one of the best campaigns of its kind across the nation. You know, we were recognized. We were among
Wonderful.
10 campaigns that were recognized by Surgeon General David Satcher in the 90s. So that we actually went to the White House. I only got outside the White House. I didn't get into the Oval Office or anything like that. It wasn't like that. but
They
but we
they had a
were
sign, "No rebels allowed."
we were recognized, which was very, very gratifying. And the campaign, you know, was a success.
Wonderful,
Yeah.
wonderful.
Mhm.
So you and I, in our pre-show meeting, we're talking about some things, and one of the things I would love for you to share a little bit about is the creation of the Roxbury Arts and Culture District,
Mhm. Mhm.
and the other, of course, is your latest project, which I'll let you share.
Well, the Roxbury Cultural District has been one of the most gratifying projects that I've worked on. Number one, it's in my neighborhood. It's very near, 5 minutes away from where I live. But the whole notion of a cultural district is something that was spearheaded by former Governor Deval Patrick, our first
Okay.
Black governor here in Massachusetts. And he wanted to uh, create an initiative that would not only lift up arts and culture in communities and commercial districts across the state, but would also lift up artists, and that would also lift up the economy of those particular commercial districts. So the idea is you use arts and culture, your arts and cultural assets in a commercial district to activate that district, so that people will be more likely to come in, they'll enjoy the arts and culture, and they'll spend their money and make the commercial district as well as the local artists more successful.
Mm-hmm.
So there are about 50 cultural districts across the state of Massachusetts. Roxbury was designated, I want to say in 2017, as a commercial district, and I was hired as a consultant to secure the designation from the Massachusetts Cultural Council and the city of Boston. So once we got the designation, our purpose again was to activate the district, also known as Nubian Square,
Mm-hmm.
formerly known as Down Dudley or
Right.
Dudley Square. The name has changed to Nubian Square. So right now, the square is undergoing a renaissance. There are 4 or 5 different arts organizations that are either preparing to move in or have already moved in.
Right.
There's a youth music organization, the Community Music Center of Boston, a 100-year-old organization that's moved out of the South End and are now moving into Nubian Square. There's the I'm going to have trouble pronouncing this, uh, Apollon, excuse me, Apollon Dance Company. There's a bookstore, Frugal Books. There's Hibernian Hall, which is a mixed use building, but they
Right.
have a very robust arts program, spoken word, music,
Mm-hmm.
theater. Um, so that gives you a sense of some of the arts organizations. And most recently, which you alluded to, Regina, there's a jazz club that's going to be opening within the next few weeks. It's the Jazz Urbane Cafe, and it's really designed as an arts and cultural space. So not only will you be able to come and hear music, you can have a great meal. There's an elevated menu, Caribbean, soul, very eclectic. We're going to be featuring local artists as well as national artists like Paul Goodnight. He's done a mural for the
Yes.
club, and we're expecting to have not only local artists but as national artists as well to fill the bill, so to speak, as we move forward. So I'm very excited about this project. It's
Yeah,
and it's
I'm
10
excited.
years it's 10 years in the making. I mean, this has really been in the works for a decade, and it's finally coming to fruition in June, which happens to be Black Music Month in America. So it's very timely.
Yes, yes. Well, thank you, because I completely forgot. That is right.
Yeah.
Sometimes we focus so much on Juneteenth coming in June,
Right. Yeah, there's a lot
and
going on
I
in
forgot.
June.
That's right. It
Yeah.
is. Well, I'm excited. One, that there's going to be an expansion in terms of the arts and cultural district, which is the
Hmm.
Nubian Square. But I'm really excited about the Jazz Urbane Cafe,
Yeah.
because you can go and hear jazz, at Scullers and a few places, but
Hmm.
there is going to be a big difference from that and what we'll hear in that
Hmm.
cafe in that
Right.
cafe.
It will be a singular experience, and
Yes.
a real boon and a real lift to the neighborhood. Yeah.
Well, I'm thanking you in advance for those projects. I'm thanking
You're
you in
welcome.
advance and loving that you're doing this kind of work. And again, for those of you who have just joined us, we thank you for being with us tonight. And you have been listening to our guest tonight, who is none other than Kelly Chun, who is the founder and principal of Kelly Chun and Associates, which is a company that basically does collaborative consultancy in Boston, Massachusetts, and deals with strategic communications, cause marketing, impact, public relations, impact work that years ago we would have called civil rights influence.
Well, yeah. Well, I like to say that
Right.
our tagline is we provide culturally smart strategies to promote social change.
Yeah,
So
that
if
that
there's a through line through all of my projects, it would be social change.
yes,
Yeah.
and that social change cuts across all the areas. And
Yes.
so there's so much diversity in her work, in those she works with and
Hmm.
those she works for. We have to take another quick break. We don't want you to go away, but again, I want to remind you the phone line is open. I know she's interesting, but you can still take a moment to call in and interrupt her. 781-384-5587, or you can email me, Regina at rgbinternetradio.com. So we're going to hear from another one of our sponsors, and we don't want you to go too far away. We will be right back.
Life can be unpredictable, and when those moments occur, you want the assurance that your family and property are protected. Sabatino Mastrocola Insurance Agency provides insurance coverage and security for every situation: home, life, flood, car, personal, or property. We're here to help you protect what matters most: your future. We are a full-service insurance agency providing experienced experts who speak Spanish, Portuguese, and English to assist you in acquiring the type of insurance coverage you need. That's the Sabatino Mastrocola promise. Contact us at 617-387-7466 or on our website, www.sabatino-ins.com. Get peace of mind today for uncertain tomorrows.
And we're back with our guest tonight, Kelly Chun. Kelly, our time is slowly winding
I
down.
know.
And not
Oh,
slowly,
so
quickly,
quickly.
quickly winding down. Um, but you and I were talking again before this show about entrepreneurship. And I
Mm.
know that that's very near and dear to you, um, because that's what began KCA. And um, and you alluded, I'll just say it that way, you alluded to the fact that you've learned some things
Oh,
in
the hard way.
entrepreneurship.
Yeah.
So, for those who are listening and thinking, I have skill sets in these areas, maybe I ought to look into um, doing some things, because the one thing I liked was that you partner with the talent that may be needed to fulfill a contract. And so
Right.
what would you say would like to say to our listeners, to our viewers, about entrepreneurship if they're thinking in that direction?
Well, the first thing I would say is identify a need. What is needed in a given marketplace, what's missing and that you can provide that would make
Mhm,
you unique or would make you a singular resource. In my case, when I first started, it was multicultural marketing, it was cause marketing. It was my connection to the news media because it was back in the day. I knew everybody, having worked at all three stations. It was easy for me to do media relations because I knew everybody.
mhm.
So, that was what I'm trying to say is know your value. You know, what is your value? What are you bringing to the marketplace? And do some research based on what is needed in the marketplace and what's missing. That would be my first recommendation. And then you mentioned collaboration and partnership. You know, to the extent that you can, maybe it's a strategic partnership. You know, later on in my business, I did form a strategic partnership. It's not a legal partnership. It's informal. If a project comes up and I need some help, I'll tap into my strategic partnership, Dental Line, which is a boutique agency that's based in downtown Boston. The principal, Jerry Dental Line, we had a whole nother, we knew each other in a whole nother life. She was in broadcast news as well, although she was on the editorial side and I was on the news side. So that helped to facilitate our partnership. So who can you partner with? And if I had it to do over again, I would have partnered sooner with someone because it's very hard to do this on your own. You do need help. And so tied to that would be delegate. The extent to which you can delegate. Now you can delegate to AI. Who knew? Go figure. You can have an agent do work, you know? But at any rate, if it's an intern, pay your interns, people. I've always paid mine. Fortunately, being in Boston, we're surrounded by colleges, universities. I'm
Yes.
currently teaching at Boston University. And so the project that I'm working on now, the Jazz Urbane Cafe, Schools Out, I've tapped into one of my students, and we're working with her on media relations. So that's another way to increase your capacity and to delegate so that everything does not fall on you. The extent to which you can get financial backing, you know, what kind of financial resources. I wouldn't go the route of credit cards the way I did. Fortunately, I've been able to, you know, mitigate my debt so that I can retire, and I don't have to retire on a street corner with a tin cup. But
Right.
I would be very careful about, you know, using your, if you own a home, you know, using a second mortgage or using your credit cards to finance your business. That really isn't, that's too risky. You know, it
Right.
really is too risky. So to the extent that you can get some more traditional financing, I would encourage that. So collaboration, you know, delegation, uh, looking to see what kind of financial resources there are. You know, there are grants, certifications. Certifications helped me. You mentioned the state certifications.
Hmm.
Um, Being a designated as a minority and woman-owned business gave me credibility. You have the, you know, imprimatur of the state giving you credentials. They vet you, and you're listed, and so prime contractors can find you if you want to subcontract to a larger business. Those kinds of things, and but most important, you know, at the start is trying to figure out what's needed in the market and what your value
Yes.
is, because that's going to give you the competitive advantage.
That is some of the best advice I've heard in a while, and I thank you because many people uh, start businesses because they're good at something, right?
Yeah,
Uh, so they make the best donuts, they or cookies or pies,
yeah,
right? Or they design the best children's outfits, or they
hmm,
crochet the cutest little things, or whatever. And they're encouraged by this. You should sell these. You should open your own
yeah,
business. And you said something though, and I'm not saying to discourage anybody with talent that
hmm,
somebody might appreciate and want to purchase the
hmm,
byproduct of that talent. But I like that you said, you know, see what's in demand, you know, make sure you
yeah.
know there is a
Is there a
need for
market?
what you're
Yeah,
going
yeah. Is
to,
there a market for it? Yeah.
right.
Hmm.
And so I think that's the soundest advice. that you could give someone, because there is a cost associated with starting your own business.
Yes.
And it's not just getting the money.
It's psychic. Yeah, it's psychic. Yeah, it's a lot of psychic energy, being willing to take a risk, and then having the support that you need, family, friends, colleagues. You really can't do it on your own.
Well, I'm glad that you understood partnerships from way back when. And I am grateful that you are doing work that is making a difference, not only in the city of Boston or the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, but in the lives of the people that are in these great districts, neighborhoods, or in the housing areas, and other things that your work has impacted. Um, I, for people who may not know, because we have you from all over the world, cause marketing is associating a business that wants to support, for instance, cancer research.
Right.
And and they want to promote a 5K race or something where the funds go to that. And that's part of the work that Kelly does and has done. And those things speak volumes, because there are people who don't know her name, but the work she's done with businesses and corporations and agencies has touched their lives. So I want to thank you, because you're that unsung hero. Although I could have told you this woman has been recognized in so many ways, I didn't get to tell you that there was a Kelly Chun Day.
Yes, you did. You did mention
Did
that.
I?
Yeah, you did mention it.
In Massachusetts.
Yeah. That was a
Boston.
thrill. That really was.
So
yeah.
This tells you that her work has touched lives, and we thank you. We thank you for being the rebel with a cause. Who does
there you
cause
go.
marketing?
Rebel with a cause.
Yes.
Yes.
And we thank you for your impact, your influence, your investment into the lives of others, and into the equity that makes a difference in housing, in whatever it may be, in arts, in culture, in voices being heard and concerns being addressed. We will pay attention if you run for governor, but but
I'm
in
not
the
going
meantime,
anywhere near that.
thank you, Kelly, for being on
Much
the show.
appreciated, Regina.
You
This
are
is
a
a great
winning woman.
opportunity.
We appreciate all that you do, and we wish you nothing but the best. And for those of you who have been with us this hour on the Winning Women Talk Show, we thank you so much for spending your time and your attention with us this evening. We'll be back next week, same time, same place, with a different guest on the Winning Women Talk Show. And so thank you for spending time with us, and we'll see you next week. And remember, if she can do it, so can you. Love somebody.